What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Soul Hoops podcast. My name is Jeffrey, and I'm joined by Ryan today. No Matthias, unfortunately, he had some personal stuff come up, so he couldn't make it with us today. But we're going to be talking about the finals a little bit, and talk about the series so far. But before we get into that, how are we doing, Ryan, today?
We're doing pretty good today. I'm certainly tired. I had work at 7, and that means I had to wake up at 6 for that, and I didn't go to bed at a good enough time to make that all work. So I'm running off little sleep, and after this, I'm probably gonna take a nap. But I'm excited to talk about the finals. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Been chilling. Did not work today, fortunately. I have worked like the last 8 days in a row. So I have today and tomorrow off. So spend some time relaxing. Going on a little bit of vacation next week for a few days.
Yeah,
Going down
nice,
to Miami for a few days.
fun.
So yeah, that'll be nice. A little decompression.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm doing good. Excited to talk about basketball.
hmm
But well, let's get right into it then. Well, actually, how was your vacation? I know you were in New York for a few
Right.
days.
Yeah, I was in New York for a few days. I had a great time actually. I've been to New York. I'd been 2 times before that, but both times I had gone, it was in April, and it was raining the entire time I was there,
Yeah.
and like 50 degrees, and I liked it, but like the weather really took away. But this time, going in June, um, the weather was awesome. Um, we actually I went with my dad. We did a lot. We fit in a couple Broadway shows. We
Nice.
saw some comedy. We just kind of,
Did
hung
some
out a
city
little
stuff.
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that sounds dope. I'm going to
Mhm.
Miami with my mom, which is a little bit of a random trip to take with your mom to Miami, but
Yeah,
she really wants to visit the city, and so I was like, I'll go with.
yeah,
So that's kind of how I am too. I'm only going for 3 days, so just be like a
hmm
little, just do some random stuff.
yeah.
Uh, but yeah, awesome. Well, let's get right into the basketball then here. Finals 3-0 Boston. Um, how are we feeling about it? I I expected Boston to kind of take care of business with this team. I think people have greatly over exaggerated the ability of the Mavericks to defend this team and keep up
mhm,
with them on the offensive end. Um, and I just think that's where the series has been. And I think it's just been clear as day that there's a talent disparity between the third best, fourth best, and fifth best player on the team on the floor at all times. That's just how it
Yeah.
is.
hmm
Um, and Boston has constructed pretty much a perfect roster for the type of system that they run and championship winning basketball. Honestly, I mean that's just what it comes down to for me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. I did think the Mavs were going to make this a series. I thought, heading into this, I probably would have gone, I think, Celtics in 6 or 7. I was expecting the Mavs to win one of the first two in Boston, kind of wake Boston up a little bit, um, from their kind of, not, I don't want to say snooze of an Eastern Conference, but they didn't
Yeah,
have, I mean, they took care of business against every team in the East, and I was expecting them to kind of, not be ready. But those like 10, 11 days or whatever, in between the conference finals and the finals, I think really, really got Boston, like good time to make a good game plan for this team and to really prepare, because that's one of the main things too. It's like, game one, Porzingis went crazy in the first quarter, but it just stood out to me how much more prepared the Celtics looked for the series, and I think that's why they're up 3-0. Um, but like, yeah, I mean, you say that the third, fourth, fifth best player, and I can't agree more with that. Like with Boston, when their best player Tatum is not shooting the ball well at all, like he's having a very bad shooting series, and they're still up 3-0 because at all times they've got 5 guys who are like 40% 3-point shooters, elite, all defensive team level defense. They all make the right play every time. They're all big. They're all like 6'6" or taller. It's like when you have so many guys out there on the floor at all times who are that, it's just hard to lose. Like they're I mean, Boston's roster is insane, and I think I've been kind of guilty of underestimating them a little bit, or being like, they've got to prove it before I'm really a believer. And I
Yeah.
mean, I think they've been proving it right now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I was someone, I think literally, I think the only way that you can beat that Boston would be beatable in the playoffs is playing a tier one superstar player who has like an all time great series, and they haven't had to deal with that one time.
Hmm.
That nobody in the East that they had to play has been a tier one superstar player. And Luca is that, in my opinion, or he's very close to that tier one of, top 3, 4 players in the world. But he's not playing the best right now. And there's been no role player support on the Mavericks at all, offensively. And I think I was talking to a Mavericks fan yesterday, and I said, yeah, I mean, they said, our offense was so good, and I didn't really think that it was real, and that's what I was worried about with the play in the finals. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, people expecting two career 30% or sub 30% average shooters in PJ Washington, Derrick Jones Jr. to shoot 40% for another whole series on the biggest stage in the sport. Like it's just
Hmm.
not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And then you pair that with Luka has nagging injuries that I think are affecting him a little bit. I don't think it's the primary reason he's not playing the greatest, but they clearly are affecting him. Um, and it just looks like Boston is the only team that's on the court that's ready to. That it looks like they're playing in a finals. You
Hmm.
know, like I think this might have been one of those things. I remember in 2021 there, or not in 2021, but a few years after, Mikal Bridges, after playing the Bucks, he said, we came out of this dogfight West. We felt like we were the best team because we played all these really great teams, and we're like, we're gonna get into the East, who's their playoffs are a joke. The Eastern Conference is a joke. The
Hmm.
Eastern Conference is sweet. Like we thought we were gonna give them work, and then they matched up with Milwaukee and they punched them in the mouth because Milwaukee was ready to play championship level basketball for an entire series, and
Hmm.
the Suns just honestly weren't. And I think that's kind of what's coming to fruition right now with this Mavericks team. It just doesn't look like the roster is a finals roster. And I agree with that. I don't think their roster is as good as people pretend it has been. I don't think their depth is as good as it has been in the playoffs. But this kind of just shows like if you get a few role players to go on a little bit of a Linsanity run, you can win some playoff series. I mean, we've
Hmm.
seen it, we saw it in every single series of this playoffs. I mean, like for the Wolves, I mean, Nikhil Alexander-Walker one series was shooting like 40% for the three, and then the next series he's pretty much unplayable on the offensive end.
Yeah.
Aaron Gordon hit like 7 threes in the first round, and then he can't even shoot a wide open corner three at all. He gets scared to shoot him in the next round.
Hmm.
Um, KCP too. I mean, Michael Porter Jr. Like we're seeing all these role players that like when they're struggling, it's hard for you to win. And I think that's coming to fruition even further. And then that's where another benefit Boston has because they have role players. I'm going to say this: Drew Holiday, Derek White, like they are role players right in there with how they play. But they are the highest tier of role players that you could ever have on an NBA roster. I mean, they are
Yeah.
borderline. They are both probably top 40 players ish. Top 40, 45 players that, once you get past those bona fide 1 and 2 option star players, like who would you rather have on your roster? A guy that is only going to be a third option? Or would you rather have like an elite defensive guard who's shooting 40% from three and can switch and can play make? And Boston has that. And I think it's just a testament to how well they've built out this roster. I was always adamant that I didn't think a lot of the problems that these players that Boston had in Kristaps and Derek White and Drew and Jaylen Brown and Tatum. I think when you have a roster that's this good, everyone's just covering up for everyone else's mistakes. I mean, Drew doesn't have to handle the ball. He doesn't have to have playmaking responsibilities. He can
Hmm.
make only the reads when he needs to. Tatum doesn't need to be the primary, he is the primary scoring option on the roster, but he doesn't need to take 30 shots because Jaylen Brown can take 20 shots because Jaylen Brown can take 18 shots and Drew can take 12 shots and Derek White can take 12 shots and Kristaps can take 15 shots. And it all evens itself out.
Yeah,
And a lot of teams just don't have that. There's no other team in the NBA that has this level of talent. It's just there
yeah.
is.
And you got to give the Celtics themselves credit too for making it all work, right?
Yeah.
We don't see teams that are this talented very often, but we do see very talented teams just not figure it out because, they aren't on the same page. You know, players have different motivations at the end of the day, but I mean, look at each of the players in the Celtics and I think each of their points per game I think went down by at least 3 or 4
Yeah.
from last year to this year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, everyone's taking less shots, you know, and I think they're fine with that because it's winning, right? There's a level of buy-in from the Celtics, which I think, Joe Mazzulla give him a lot of credit for as well. I think he's like a very it's kind of like the Steve Kerr thing where it's like, is he a good coach because his team is so good? But I
Yeah.
do think that Joe Mazzulla is like a really good coach for this team.
Mm-hmm.
And like everybody has just so willingly sacrificed, like Al Horford going to the bench, even when he was a starter last year, like the whole team is sacrificed to make this thing work, and you're seeing the benefits of it right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you're looking at it and it's just at the end of the day, they've all figured out how to play with each other in a great system that works for all
Yeah.
of their skill sets. I mean, I don't know if there's been a team that's this perfectly constructed for the 5 out system in the modern NBA. I
No, I
don't.
mean everyone is like, I mean their starting roster like 5 elite shooters. Like even like Drew is above 40%, or maybe not, but he's had a really good shooting season.
Yeah.
Porzingis is a you know high 30s 3-point shooter. Derek White
Mhm.
is above 40%.
Yeah.
Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum are guys you don't leave open. They're knocking down shots too. Like and then you got Al Horford off the bench, Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser. So even when the bench guys come in, you're bringing in 3 more shooters. Like, yeah, their spacing it's been incredible, and that's what allows Tatum to drive to the basket so much when his shot isn't falling. Is because they're spaced out. He's got room to collapse the defense, kick it out to a player, and then again, they're all smart playmakers too. You kick it
Mm.
out, a few swings,
The
Drew
growth.
Holiday. Drew Holiday is cutting off ball. Derek White's cutting off ball, and it's offense just comes so naturally for them.
Yeah, the growth. I think from this roster, from especially Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown, playmaking wise, has been the real reason that been able to take the leap that they've taken. And
Hmm.
I just don't think that that growth is something that can really be. I don't even know what the word. I don't think you can really quantify it.
Yeah.
Um, because people have, and I'll say this, I have had still have a problem with sometimes because it even showed up in the game 3. I do have some problems when with how they operate in the fourth quarter when they have a lead, and I still do think there's problems there, and I don't think they ever won't have problems there because they're a jump shot heavy team, and I think they can cause problems,
Hmm.
but every team's a shot heavy team now. Like it's just how it is. That's why we've seen so many blown leads and stuff like that. But in clutch time, even with their struggles with their shot making at times, I still think you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, we are we have so many more shot makers now. There's so many more shot makers. Um, Drew, for everything that his problems that he has or he had, he still was an incredible. He is still a shot maker.
Yeah.
And he can still create for himself if needed. It's not what you want him primarily doing at this stage in his career, but he can. Um, Derek White is just the king of prayer threes. Like I don't like
Mhm.
he just throws grenades up, and eventually one or two of them is gonna fall. Um, and then obviously like everyone knows how talented Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum are at you know shot from as shot makers. So
Yeah.
I think it's just been it's just been positive for the Celtics team to see that growth because I think it creates a much more sustainable environment for them going forward when they need to plug and play new players eventually.
Yeah.
Because Horford might retire this year. You never know. He's getting up there. You can definitely see the step back, and if they're out, they're going to win a championship this year. So, you know, um, he might retire, and Drew is getting older, and he's still a very, very good player. But you really never know when that physical decline is going to come. Because just 1 year, it can just happen. Especially for a guy that relies so much on lateral movement and strength. Um,
Right.
and Derek White's gonna command a very hefty contract.
Hmm.
So you never know what's gonna happen with that. But we'll see. And obviously, that's not something that we really want to talk about, but
Yeah.
right now. But let's move over to the Mavs side of it. Then, I mean, I I've been very disappointed with the Mavs roster, top to bottom, to be honest. Um, I guess we can start off at the top. I mean, Luca, the numbers have looked good, but the eye test and the impact of
Yeah. He
what
is
he's been
not.
doing.
He has not played that good.
Yeah.
Plainly.
Yeah. His defense has been atrocious. Probably some of the worst I've seen from a superstar player
Yeah.
in a finals series. I mean, and this is what it comes down to with that whole scenario. Like this defense talk, like in the modern NBA, offense is going to be more important than defense. It's just how it is. Like that's what it is. Um, but um, I just think that all of the bad defenders we've labeled Jokic, or in previous years like Jokic and Trey Young even and other guys, Donovan Mitchell the last few years, even though he's looked better this year and in the playoffs definitely, but just these guys, they've all figured out ways that with their offensive load to be serviceable or passable. Like
Hmm.
Jokic figured out a way to be a passable defensive big. That he figured
True.
out how to be passable,
Yeah.
at least average. I think Trey Young had incredible strides this year with figuring out how to play defense at his stature and position and size.
I agree.
Uh, there's a ton of guys. I don't want to go through the
Cat.
whole list of them. Cat moving to the four and learning how to play as a big body big instead of a shot blocker and help
Hmm.
side. Using his frame. All those guys, but they've all figured out, and Luca has not figured it out. Luca has not figured out a way to be a consistently passable defender, and that is problematic. It is problematic, and especially when you're trying to win a championship, because when you have a player of that caliber, you're trying to win a championship. That's just what it is. You're championship or bust pretty much every year if you have a top five player. Even if fans want to convince them that they're not, that should be your goal. If you have a top five player, you should be trying to win a championship every year. So, like, if you're sitting there and you're looking at your best player and he's getting targeted every way down the court, and and then the whole fouls, like, I mean, just fouling like four times in a quarter in a close game.
Yeah. Like
What are you doing, man?
it's the kind of thing where like usually you wouldn't think a star player gets, you know, their sixth foul in that kind of game where it's close going into a must game in a must win game three. But like you look at Luca's fouls, they were all like bad, avoidable fouls that like yeah, you took yourself out of the game because your defense was so bad and because you fouled so much. Like, you know, game three down 0-2, that's a must win game
Mhm.
because obviously no team
At
is
home.
at home. At home. And when Kyrie Irving gives you the game he did, Like Luka's got to be better than that. And it's just like they needed to win this game because no team has ever come back from down 0-3. You've got to win that game 3. And I don't think Luka played a very good game. He played, for his standards, he played a poor game. In the
Yeah.
fouls, I think, you know, is the most obvious, is it's the most obvious thing. The defense and the fouls. I think he's got to be better in that regard. And like what you said, if Jokic has found a way to be a positive impact defender, I think Luka's got to do that too. And I think part of that also is kind of quitting getting distracted by the refs as easily as he does, because when he complains and he takes himself out of the live play, like, you're letting the other team go on a 5-on-4 run. That
Yeah,
is,
there's a play in game 3, um, and he literally, he thought he got fouled and he sat on the floor arguing with the ref, and the Celtics got a free transition layup because there wasn't enough guys to get back.
yeah, I mean, the game is going on and you're complaining about the refs.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just frustrating because he's too good to be doing that still. So,
Yeah.
and I don't think there's one there. I mean, Luca isn't the reason the Mavs are losing. Like, that's crazy, but
Yeah.
he hasn't pushed them over the top. Like, when we have these series and we say, like, you know, the team with the best player, they have an advantage. It's because in situations like this, you can rely on the best player to just, create a win, to
Hmm.
finish that game, find a way to win. And Luca hasn't been able to do that. He hasn't even looked really that close to doing so either,
Yeah.
which is it's problematic. And the Celtics defense too, give them credit because they are just they're such a better matchup for the Mavs than the Wolves were, defensively, and they've made them work. Um, it's just it hasn't been, and for Luca's standards, from what you'd expect, coming off the run he just had, I think he's been disappointing in these finals.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think I just think I said it and you've said it as well. Like it comes down to, is your best player playing at a standard that you feel comfortable with? And the answer is no.
Yeah,
And on the flip side, you look at the Celtics, their best player is not playing to his standard either, but he has the infrastructure to make up for it.
yeah,
The Mavericks do not. Um, but we can go on to some other parts of this Mavericks roster. I think I do want to give I think Kyrie had a very poor first 2 games. Third game 3, he had a very good game. Obviously, I think he had 34, something like that, 34, 38 maybe. Hey, either way, yeah. But he had a great game. He absolutely took over in the third and fourth quarter, um, and in the second too as well. Like to end the game, he was very very good to bring them
yeah,
back from 20 down. Um, and I just think if your second best player is giving you a game like that, you should be winning a playoff game, especially when it's close. But then that takes me to the next point. I mean, just the rest of this roster is just not fit to be playing championship level basketball at the end of the day. I mean, it's just very clear.
yeah,
Um, I think one thing that I really did want to talk about is the absolute hype that these Mavs big men got all playoffs, and they deserved. I think Lively has been very good, and Gafford has been very good, but people were acting like there was prime Hakeem Olajuwon in the paint from the Dallas Mavericks, and it's like these two dudes. This is a rookie and a mid-tier at best starting five, like in Gafford. Like he's like a mid-tier starter at best, and it's like they're not going to just like they're not suddenly going to turn to AD and just like mitigate all the entire paint by themselves.
hmm
They're just not good enough for that, and I think people thought that they would for whatever reason. I just don't know
yeah. No, for
where that
sure.
all
I mean,
came from.
yeah, the bigs have not. have not been that great. Lively, I think, especially game 1 and 2, just looked like he looked very frenzied, and he looked like he didn't really know what to do. A lot of times on defense, like he fouled a lot, which for no reason. Like I think he was overly eager to jump at things and to kind of wave his arms around. I don't think he's played super well. I think he had a fine game 3, but overall has not played super well. Gafford just hasn't had much of an impact. So they've been disappointing, and a lot of their wings, which you know on this team, like if you're a wing, you're going to be a catch and shoot guy, really mostly,
Yeah.
and there's volatility to that, as we've seen. Against the Clippers, Derek Jones Jr. is going crazy. Against the Thunder, PJ Washington's putting up 27-point games, like plural. Against the Wolves, it felt like you aren't leaving guys open. Kyrie Irving is making all of his threes. The Wolves, they just dominated them overall, but we're seeing now in the finals kind of the law of averages. Like these Maverick shooters have just not been able to consistently make their shots. I mean,
Yeah.
Derek Jones Jr. nothing, Dante Exum nothing. Maxi Kleba has been awful. Like Maxi Kleba has been really really bad this series. Josh Green just hasn't been able to do much. Tim Hardaway Jr. got in for 19 minutes, didn't make a shot.
He hasn't made a shot since game 2 of the Thunder series or something, like May 6th. It was the last time he made a shot. Is June 13th.
Yeah, I thought he was awful last night. He was at minus 16.
And they went with him. They put in
Jade Hardy got 3 minutes. I don't get it.
Kid put in THJ when Luka fouled out. Dude, he's been horrible for 2.5 playoff series straight.
He's been really bad.
He's been getting DNPs, dude. And you put him in crunch time of a 3-point game when your best player fouls up. When you have other guards on the roster. I would have rather just put in another wing guy.
Yeah.
Like, what value is he bringing? You're going to give the ball to Kyrie for the next 4 minutes straight, which they did do in game 3. They literally gave it to Kyrie every single time. Every single play.
Yep. Yeah, I mean it's just been rough on that front, and the Mavs, they just haven't had enough. It feels like in this series to kind of get them really anywhere. So, and again, in game 3, the Celtics Porzingis probably isn't going to play the rest of this series. He missed game 3, and the Celtics they looked perfectly capable of winning without him. That's how good they are. So. Yeah, I mean the Celtics are going to get their championship. It's been a long time coming for them. They've played like they've been here before because they've been in the finals, and they did lose to the more experienced team last time. And now this time they are the more experienced team, and the Mavs are the team that's coming in, and maybe they don't really know what they're totally in for. So it's the Celtics needed to get theirs eventually after the trades they made last summer. I think it makes sense that that they're getting it done, and I think it's it's impressive from Brad Stevens also, because after having gone so far in the playoffs year after year, like it would be pretty easy to just be like complacent a little bit with your roster and be like, oh, we'll probably muster up another run. But they remained aggressive. They got Porzingis. They saw an opening up for Drew. They got on it, and now they're here.
Yeah. The ability. I mean, shout out to the Nets organization back in whatever year, because that.
Yeah,
they are the ones that made all this possible by giving them all those firsts for a bunch of washed all-stars. So yeah, that's that. And then also just the assets that I did say, because I saw, obviously I'm more involved in, like the Bucks Twitter and stuff like that. I saw some guys talk, well, if we want to beat the Celtics next year, we need to have, all two-way guys. Most teams, almost all teams, 20, probably, there's probably, I could probably think of 2 teams with enough assets to just build a absolute God squad roster like this. And it's probably like the Rockets now that they have the number 3 overall pick,
The
the
Thunder,
Thunder,
maybe. Yeah.
Thunder. That's about it. Um, and no other team has the assets to ever be able to assemble something like this right now. And it takes a lot. I mean, and also the Celtics just hit on a ton of draft picks in a row. I mean,
Mm.
Marcus Smart, then a few later, a couple of years later, Jaylen Brown, then Tatum, then Robert Williams was a good player they used as a trade piece, being able to flip guys like Romeo Langford and all them, and Aaron
Mhm.
Nesmith and all those guys, just sending them around with attached with these extra firsts that they were able to accumulate. It got them a ton. It just got them a ton. Flipping Kyrie for all the stuff that they did, and well, Kyrie left to free agency, but either way, using those assets to flip for Kyrie. Sorry, I said it backwards.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just it's a blessing to have that many assets and that many good players, all homegrown. You don't have to overpay in free agency, and you have bird rights on all of them and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
Hmm. For
awesome.
sure.
Yeah. Last thing that I talk about the finals MVP, I guess. I'd probably roll with Jaylen Brown right now.
So would
He's
I.
been, I think he's been, I think he's been the best player on the roster.
Hmm.
Um, and I think he's had the best scoring numbers. He's been the most efficient. He's been very good on defense, and
Yeah, he's guarded Luca like a lot, and
yeah,
he's done a fine job at that. And then on offense, he's been the most consistently um, productive on that side. So I'd also go with Jaylen Brown.
yeah. Tatum would probably like if we're doing like a bracket, like of just the Celtics guys, it'd probably be like
Mhm.
JB. I'd probably put Tatum second because I do think his playmaking and rim pressure has been one of the driving factors in this series.
Yeah,
But I think Drew would probably be neck and neck with them. He's been so good on both sides of the floor. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, awesome. All right. Well, I think we can wrap up our finals talk then. Appreciate everyone who's watched the video. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and peace out.
peace.